Southern Indiana head coach Matt Santoro. Coach, the season's upon us. Talk about just the excitement and everything that you feel going into this 2025 campaign.
Yeah, I think, it is exciting. We're kind of getting through the transition and, we have a lot of new people on the roster. And I think we all feel like we are, poised to make some progress. And, it's exciting to have an OVC men's soccer league. And going into the third year here. And I think we all, are going into it with a lot of anticipation.
Well, you've been at USI since 2009, and you referenced, you were Division two. Now you've got the full Division one, eligible for the postseason. Just, a lot of things have changed, but just what are some of maybe the biggest differences between when you first started at USI and like, going into this season for you?
Yeah, well, yeah, it has been quite a journey, So we were a Division two school, when I first came here almost 17 years ago, and obviously we've made this transition, and the step up to Division one has some differences in terms of level and a lot of logistics and other ways that you build a program. So I think we knew it was going to take a little bit of time. We had some young guys who kind of inherited the move at the beginning, and yeah, I think we've just learned some things along the way, and we feel like we're in a pretty good place right now.
Well, now you are eligible for NCAA postseason. That 3 year, which you thought was going to be four, it was just a 3 year reclassification. I don't know if burden's the word, but that takes a little extra weight off. Like now, if your team's good enough and you win, you're going. How has that helped change in like what you do recruiting wise going forward?
Yeah, I think it does help. It does help. I think look, we've always told recruits is that it's nice to be eligible for the NCAA tournament, but you got to do the work and be good enough to compete for it and contend and try to make it. So, but I think having that there just kind of, instead of being a program in transition, being a program that is fully there, Division one, it just kind of it takes that little moniker off, and it makes things more official, and you kind of can look, kind of full steam ahead into what you're trying to get done, and it's nice to be through that process.
Before I ask you some more specific questions about your team, just reference the OVC. We're only 3 years into this now, the third year of play. What have you learned in those first 2 years about, the teams you're playing, like rivalries that have started? Sort of how has that all kind of gone and what you've learned about this new league?
Yeah, well, you know, I think one of the things we weren't surprised about is we were going to play good teams, face good teams and good coaches. We knew they would be a good level. We knew it was going to be competitive. We kind of understood that. I think maybe in the early years we might be on the, kind of on the bottom end of that. So obviously we have some intentions and plans to make some strides. But I think we knew that it was going to, there was going to be some work to do. I think that as far as rivalries, rivalries are created when you prove to people that you can beat them, and it takes a rivalry is when either team can win. So I think there may be some moments where they're starting to form, but it's going to be up to us to turn uh, some of these relationships with our OVC members into rivalries. So that's what we hope we're ready to do.
Let's talk a little bit more specific about your team. Just the preseason. When we're recording this, we're still in the preseason, haven't started the regular season yet. Just what have you seen and what have you liked from this group of guys in the preseason?
Yeah, I think we're more athletic, we're louder, uh, there's a little bit of a, a different energy and competitiveness that we knew would, obviously some of that obviously comes coaches have to create that and it has to be part of the environment. And but I think some of it also comes from personnel and experience and pedigree. And I just think this has been, even though we're young, we're a very young team, but it's been it's been kind of a loud, energetic, competitive atmosphere. A little bit more so than maybe we've had the last couple years. I think we feel that vibe.
Is so we did a players to watch list. You had David or David, I'm not for sure I'll say his name on the players, but talk about some of the players on your team that yeah, maybe even a super fan or just a casual USI fan that they should be on the lookout for this.
Yeah, we have a lot of newcomers, so we don't have a ton of returners this year. I think that's, it's just the way it worked out, partly by design, and it works out for us. But the returners they're good guys, they're good players, they're competitive, they're good athletes. David Davila, a hero, Nakame, Jackson Mitchell, really down the line, Pablo Juan. We have a good group of guys um, who again, even though it's a small group, they set the tone. They know what this is about. They're here for a reason. They've, you know, maybe gone through some things the last couple years, and they're hungry to win. They're hungry to see this different. So I think they provide a lot of good leadership for the newcomers.
What would you say your team's style will be on the field this year? That's the first part. And the second part, does that change every year depending on your pieces? You may have what your identity is, but if you have a couple different players, what you want to do, offensively or defensively, does that, morph depending on that?
Yeah, I think it definitely does a little bit from year to year because, again, it's a fluid situation. It depends on personnel and availability of players and just the nature of the player you have. So it does change a little bit. And you're right, it changes kind of within the framework of our identity, so we're not going to be completely someone we're not. I think that it's been a little bit hard for us the last couple of years to maintain who we thought we wanted to be just because we were a lot of times we played a lot more without the ball and we were underdogs in a lot of games and that kind of thing. So it was a little bit different, but we want to, I'm sure we want to do what a lot of teams want to do, but we want to defend well. We want to, be organized and difficult to play against. We want to be fit and prepared and know what we're doing going into games, and have a good idea about ourselves. And then be good with the ball and create chances and make things difficult on teams. We think we're going to be able to, create more chances for ourselves and be a little bit tougher to play against this year.
So it's obviously still preseason, but in August, what do you think the strength of your team is right now going into the season? And do you think that's still going to be the strength in 2 or 3 months, or maybe there'll be other areas that will become a strength?
Definitely, there will be some others to come about. I think right now the thing about us is again we have a lot of new guys that have kind of just met each other. Training camp has gotten off to a good start. I think our strength at the moment is just going to be our energy, our athleticism. The guys are learning to play together. All right, we kind of, we have a few preseason games to kind of feel that out and get that, and a tough opening to the schedule. So, we'll learn a little bit more about ourselves. But I would say right now it's we have some athletes. They're coachable, and we're going to be all over people. We're going to try to be all over people, and we'll find our soccer. But some of that we'll probably see as we get into the season more so than right away.
How long, and it's changed every year, and with people bringing in a different amount of newcomers, how long does it take for a team to kind of gel and get together? Can it happen in a preseason, or do they have to take a couple regular season games and then maybe it's conference play? But how does that change year to year? I guess.
Yeah, and I think it depends on how new a team is, how established the program is, how many returners you have, how many veterans you have. I think for a very new team like ours, and I think most college coaches would agree with this, our acclimation time is not nearly long enough, right? We have 16 days until the season begins from when we officially start. Professional coaches complain when they only have 6 weeks to get ready. We have 16 days. So the time is really too short. We have to make the most of it. And definitely it will take a few games into the season, not necessarily for us to compete and try to win some matches, but to really become who we are, to get to know ourselves a little bit and to kind of come together more. It'll be a work in progress all the way up to the beginning of the OVC schedule, I think.
You referenced the beginning of the season. You got Louisville to start off, but then you're gonna have a bunch of home games that against good opponents, but they'll be on your home turf. Talk about that non-conference schedule a little bit.
Yeah, look, we started Louisville, so we know why not go to an ACC opponent to start the season? I think maybe some people think that someone over here isn't a good scheduler, but it's a great game for us. It's great for us to experience that, to play against a team like that, to learn about ourselves. Obviously, we're going over to compete and do the best job we can. After that, we have a lot of home games, and as you said, they're very good opponents. But we wanted to, especially with this young group, we wanted to try to be able to sleep in our beds and play at home for a few weeks and kind of, get it that way. So we think it works out good in terms of it's a good schedule to play good opponents, to improve each week, to compete, to get ready for what we think is obviously going to be a tough OVC schedule. And we think it sets up pretty well for us to, to continually get better.
You mentioned rivals. You had a great answer earlier. You do play Evansville, and it's you call it the Mayor's Cup, and they're right there in town. And geography obviously plays a big part in rivalries too. Talk about having somebody cross town that you can play and battle at and see where you are before starting conference play.
Yeah, that really is a great one. The Mayor's Cup. We used to do it in the spring, even when we were Division Two. Now to do it in the fall, make it a real game. Saturday, September 13th, we play them. And that is, we play for a trophy, and that is a rivalry. Even though they have beaten us the first few years of our Division One, in our Division One era, it's a rivalry. It's across town. We're about 3.5 miles away from each other. It's a home at our place this year. Um, and that is really a great game for us, not only for the community, but to have us play in front of, a large crowd, probably over 1,000, maybe close to a couple thousand people. There's a lot of interest, a little bit of pressure, and I think that's just all great for us. So it's a very good game in Evansville, and we appreciate that those guys value it as much as we do, and we've had some good games, and we look forward to one this year as well.
Well, Coach, appreciate your time and just best of luck to you and your team all season long.
Thank you very much.